Okay, good morning, everyone. We are thankful to have Sean Bates here with us this morning from DESE to share some assessment updates. He's not feeling the best, so we really appreciate him powering through because I know so many people are wondering some updates. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Sean.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, sorry we couldn't do our call yesterday. I just didn't have the energy in the afternoon. Kind of dealing with some circulatory issues, but getting through it. Luckily, there's not many updates or many changes occurring this year, which is a relief, I know, for many. Pretty much the only big topic has been the discussion about the priority standards. So we were looking at, the blueprints are still exactly the same. So, the blueprints are going to be reporting out exactly the same percentages. What we have done is tried to put more priority standards into those reporting categories. So some of those discrete little questions, that's been lingering out there that are in the supporting standards may not show up this year. So hopefully it kind of gives a little more focus. As comments from all of our curriculum directors and myself, the conference I've been to, you still need to instruct those standards. Those supporting standards are important. Is it just an accessible importance? This is where, the commissioner was really kind of wanting on the onset of identifying the priority standards. And Dr. Hines, if really getting the focus of the big ideas, I think that's where most of those priority standards rely and fall to. So, those supporting standards will appear somewhere in there. If the students can respond to those big upper level ideas, those supporting standards are evident that, that they are there. We're just not measuring discreetly. I know it kind of becomes a little convoluted, but it's really getting to that focus. We're looking at about 80%. Again, math is a little bit of the quirk, especially with grades 3 through 5 and that numbers-based 10, that NBT, which are not identified in 3 through 5. They are in K2, huge, really understanding that base 10. In 3 through 5, they really don't become priority standards, but there are those standards that really need to be instructed to support that algebraic relationships and thinking about getting into those first steps of fractions. We're still reporting to that. One, we didn't want to change the blueprint because, and again, that changes all of the cut scores and everything, and you guys need stability with your data. And knowing that everything that the strategic plan back in December that Dr. Hines presented to the state board, and you've heard from the directors, we're looking at a full reset or redesign of the system in 24-25. Trying to keep stability for the next couple of years is the most important thing. Not only that, just coming out of the pandemic, as the governor says now, will this be an endemic? Is trying to keep that stability, looking at your data and, tracking those fifth graders on up, because you've got some data points. Those early really little ones, and I call them little ones, my granddaughter's in that group, where they didn't get tested in grade 3, got a test in grade 4, but it was, partial instruction, or the instruction was all over the board. The schools were trying to get back in, especially in the KC area. Some of you didn't get back in until right after Christmas or in November. So we know that you had modified instruction. So hopefully this year you've got them, most of your kiddos into the classroom this year and can get some stability. So that's why we're keeping the data as stable as possible. Other than that, bigger changes that I think is going to come for this year is we can report earlier. We're hoping to have all of your data. So all your item analysis reports would be available by July 18th. I know if you're on vacation, don't make a mad dash, but it will be sitting there and be available. AOCs may be a week earlier. I think July 11th is what we're shooting for. Again, those are the absolute deadlines. So we're trying to get it there faster, especially for EOCs. All of the cut scores have been set. So government is finally back on track with the rest of the assessments. So all of your item analyses reports will be there, your kids' achievement levels. So all of that's going to be there well before school starts. We are looking at that week of July. I'm going to make sure I get my dates right. I'm thinking somewhere around July 21st. We've been hosting an assessment hour. Really hoping to July 21st and maybe do it again that next week also, is just hosting a session about navigating through the systems, but also kind of looking at the data, kind of looking at it from the lens from the curriculum directors and myself and my staff about looking at the data, because I know a lot of it can be overwhelming for some. Especially new district testing coordinators that are coming in, or curriculum coordinators looking at your data. It's just kind of giving some insights, because it's always one of those, when we talk about item analyses reports, a lot of people go into panic mode. We all were trained many moons ago about, sorting through the data and then highlighting anything that was below a certain percentage. And then we start strategizing about how to support the kiddos, to do better. There's one of the pieces that we forget, or we've kind of forgotten through that process, that items are also designed in this type of assessment to do one thing, is to discriminate between the proficiency groups. So if you think about an item that you're anywhere from 14 to 20%, students are mastering that item, is probably not to go into absolute panic mode and try to figure out how I got to get all of my kids into this, get this question correct. There are other things to look at. Look at the DOK, look at the standard itself. What is it really asking? And many times those questions are really about sorting out the advanced kiddos. So trying to figure, going in and trying to make up, worksheets or, supports for those kiddos. It kind of, we ask that you take a minute to really strategize and really look at how that student is attacking where they're at. And really, almost you have to backtrack it, and look at it and go, okay, they can't do an advanced question if they ask to analyze. Do we need to go all the way down to the basic skills first and then build up to that? And that's where I've been trying to support the science data for this year. As we're very, very close. We've actually hired the person. I can't officially announce her name yet. That will be joining the staff until the contract is complete, but we do have a science director coming on July 1. Yes. One job off my list, I think. But it's really looking like the science data, and I've really been honing in when I've been working with the science teachers this year, or had the opportunity, like thinking about the 5th grade data. And when that comes back in, it's really, we should never look at the 5th grade teacher or the teachers or that whole cohort of teachers, but look at it vertically. Look at it from K through 5, and because those standards, as we assess, is a 3 through 5 gap, a 3 through 5 band. But many of those standards really start at the K1, 2, and thinking about how much that instruction really feeds into that. And many of you know that you've been in the elementary world, science and social studies will get pushed to the side, as often as it can, make sure that we can support the math and the ELA. Been there, done that, and understand it. But it's one of those, not teaching it at all does it does have a huge effect, and we will call that ripple. And so it's one of those evidentiary pieces to really come back and say, you've got some time, or how can we work together, thinking about, as the curriculum directors have been talking about ELA, especially in science and social studies, about literature. How much of that literature can we support? In science and social studies provides a beautiful backdrop for some probably very good informational text that students would like or may address. Not always, some subjects they're just not interested in. But it's one of those, there are lots of good readers out there, opportunities to use, maybe if you've got a textbook, is to use some of that text instead of some of the basal text for some nonfiction. And there again, myself as an elementary teacher, some of those nonfiction stories in my old basals, the kids just did not like, and so one of those, maybe if you could go back and support and just see the standards that you're trying to address in ELA, you can address it in that text and still get the science or the social studies instruction in there. So I kind of went off on the data a little bit, but again, that's how we'll be trying to really put a story to the data, helping the districts look through the data, parse through the data. And again, anything that you need from us between now and those dates, thinking about it, don't hesitate to send it to any of our curriculum directors or the assessment staff too, because we all have our lens. We know the other districts have their lenses. Pivot tables, they love doing a lot of that work too, sorting through the data. So, we'll try to make this very open and meet a lot of the institutions across the state and build off that knowledge base of looking at it from multiple ways and multiple perspectives. Because again, we've got the large districts, from 20,000 kids down to a small district of 17 kiddos. So looking at the data is completely ununiform at all, all thoughts. So, we definitely try to give you the best supports as we can on that. So, bigger updates that we've got, other than just a reminder for any of you who are looking at EOCs and pre-coding, Monday's the last day for the window 3. Your kiddos will be in the system on April 22nd. If you miss that, give us a holler. We can kind of work through and help you try to get through the system and upload the kiddos. They are not the most friendly layouts with the vendors, but easily can be navigated and assist to get any of your kiddos in there. Also, just a quick reminder about medical waivers. There is a new medical waiver form. Connie Codenfeld, who works in MSIP and data accountability, has done a really nice job of really kind of outlining what is acceptable waivers for students and, which students wouldn't qualify for the waivers. It's always been kind of not been identified appropriately for some of you to really identify, should you go for this waiver or not. Then you don't find out until midsummer or fall when you find out that you didn't get granted. Connie's done a really good job of trying to help provide that pathway. We know students who have the acutes. Just thinking about a student was in a car accident and will not be back in the building, and probably will not have any educational services. That's unacceptable. We are kind of looking at some long-term issues. There's one in there that's really interesting about students who have autoimmune deficiencies, and they're completely virtual. They can't have any human or outside contact currently, Those are one of those kiddos that we look at with a good documentation and will, provide that waiver. It's always been convoluted. I hate to use that term, but it has been in the past for many years. Will they or will they not? That one is one we've been definitely looking at, as we know that there is more virtual instruction now. A good, appropriate virtual instruction. Students who are homebound but are receiving services, the adults are coming out or they're able to check in with them, those identified probably would not receive the waiver. It's just one of those. It's within the, and I'll send this to Sean. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to drag it up because it's kind of mind blowing to surf the web on the DESE website while we're on the Zoom. But that has been updated. Just a reminder. Also, quite a few questions are starting to roll in about your EOC exception codes or exceptions. Now is the time. That file was posted, your senior file was posted in February. You're going to get a memo from, I think, ODSM or the Office of Data System Management and MOSIS in April, just a reminder, but you may want to jump on that and look at it. Real quick, that one always we forget about, and then we try to get you in the appeals section later in August, is your MAP A kiddos. Make sure you go in and check off that government so it doesn't ping your system. Those kiddos have that exemption code. They don't have to take the government assessment. But again, also just double check, making sure any of your transfer kids who moved in, are also those kiddos who got Algebra 1 somewhere else and they're now in your district and you don't want to test them. If you can validate that they got the credit somewhere else, I would use that exception 4 code, unless they're out of state or parochial or homeschool students. Then you can use the EX2 code. But right now is a good time to get that checked off before summer gets here, and then in the late July, early August, you get that LND file, and then you're always having to fight those appeals. Hopefully, this will save some of your time and headaches. So just wanted to kind of get that out there and remind you about that. The only other big update, and it's been a nightmare since Apple pushed out 15.4. Hopefully none of you are on Apple devices. Our vendors have been out there communicating with you. If they haven't, I apologize, but we've been trying to track down the last couple of years all of our iPad users. iOS 15.4 and what just came out is 15.41 this morning. We're having still some TTS issues, text-to-speech issues, and it's in their programming, not the vendors. They pushed out a lot of updates on security. And granted, we all know what's going on in the world right now, and we hear it quite often about security issues from across the pond over in the eastern side of the world, trying to make sure everything's secure. But one of their patches is creating a nightmare, and it causes some of the text-to-speech packages not to perform appropriately. So, we've been asking if you can, don't update until we can get everything validated. There is that language, as you get closer to the testing session and the new pushes from the Chrome's, iOS, the Macs, even Windows, when they're pushing up their updates. As much as everybody tries to research and know what's going to happen or what's coming in those packages, you never know until it's finally pushed out, and sometimes it will cause an issue. So it's always kind of nice if you know that something is stable, to kind of keep it there and make sure that it's performing okay. So right now 14.1 just got pushed out this morning. Right before this call, I was on a call with DRC, and their fix for the text-to-speech to make sure it runs absolutely smoothly was not in this package. So I would say it'll probably be in 14.2. Don't know when that will come out, but I got a feeling it'll be in about a week, the way they're pushing out everything as quickly as possible, because not only are the testing vendors, I think some other programs are having some issues with that latest iOS. I know my granddaughter's had it on one of her games, so messing with her Roblox is not good. So I'm going to stop right here, catch my breath, and see if there's some questions.
Okay, so we had a few in the chat, Sean, if you don't mind. Casey just asked in regard to the software you're talking about, is that only for Apple users that should be an issue?
Yes, only Apple.
Okay.
Chrome and Windows has been running very nicely. So yeah, it's just the Apple iOS update. They had 38 security updates.
Oh my goodness.
And they're 15.4, and Drew and I went through and go, could be that one, and that one.
Right. Another question that came up, just a clarifying one, on April 22nd, was that date just what you had mentioned for kids to make sure their information is entered into the system for EOC? There was confusion. Somebody thought, did you say that they couldn't start taking the EOC until April 22nd, or was it just their information needs to be entered?
So April 22nd is when Windows 3 data will appear in the Questar NWA system. So Monday's the close of Windows 3 with Moses. And so then they got to do all their stuff, and then they'll send it on Friday. And so it takes about a week or so for NWA to get it all loaded.
Great, thank you. A question I had, and I apologize if I missed it, and but at one point I thought I had heard something about a grade 2 assessment coming, maybe not for accountability purposes, but could you speak to that or know anything about a grade 2 assessment? I thought it was just going to be in reading, maybe.
Yeah, there is, within SIP 6, you see in the standards and indicators a measurement for grade 2 literacy. So yes, Dr. Hines has asked us to go look for an assessment, looking at the science of reading. So we're pretty close to pushing out an RFP. So we haven't awarded anything, and it would be spring of 23 would be, I think is what they want to call as a pilot. Nothing that would, to kind of set a baseline.
Okay.
So hopefully by the start of school, we have identified. Again, it may be, I don't know, it may be one of those where we look at multiple, and so districts may be able to choose. It's one of those, it's still kind of coming down to a lot of discussions with Dr. Hines and with Heather Knight and Lisa Scroggs, literacy, and Cammy Goucher, also with ELL. Because really looking at this is, if it's going to be a useful tool that schools may not have, or that they don't feel comfortable measuring the full gambit of literacy, measuring all of that literacy, that this tool is useful, but it's also equitable too.
Sure.
And that's been kind of difficult to really think about our special education population and the EL population. Something that can really help measure their reading ability, and getting to all the domains of science. And I am not an expert at that. That's when I go back to Heather and Lisa and go, explain this to me. I can go out and bid for you. But yeah, we're looking to push out an RFP probably later April. And so hopefully we'll have this well awarded before school starts. We may have information by the administrators conference, but I wouldn't guarantee that.
Okay.
They keep telling me purchasing has become a lot more nightmare over at OA.
Right. Well, I'd like to open up to anybody else on the call. If you have questions, you feel free to unmute yourself or put any questions in chat. I had a grade 4 teacher ask me to ask a specific question. Do you know if the actual map test grade 4 writing prompt, does it save if it's not submitted? So I guess is there
Yes.
okay.
It will save. It's supposed to save every 30 seconds.
That's good.
So it'll save that metadata in there. So it should be saving as long as you're, oh, I bit my thumb. As long as you're connected. And so it's always one of those to make sure that green light is on or the red light, you know, and it's always one of those we kind of forget to highlight and remind the kiddos, don't hit submit if you see that red light. And I know it's more prevalent in the EOC. You've got that red green band in there. But yes, the system is supposed to save every 30 seconds. So in the background, it's sending up information and capturing that. So whenever you've lost connection, air quote, if you ever lose connection, it'll be from whatever that last 30-second submission, it should still always be there. So if you logged out and logged back in, it would be to about wherever that last 30-second submission, but it does capture that.
So that was my question, Sean. Thank you for answering it. So I do have another question, if you don't mind, Sean. So teachers, of course, stress over the writing prompt and how much work goes into it, how many points it's worth, of course, you know, just the accountability of that. That is awesome information to know. Where can we find that so that when we are doing our administrators training, there's just really not a whole lot on DESE to train our MAP administrators with, other than like just that self-guided PowerPoint. Is there anything else that you think DESE will put out to train those administrators with? Just all of us test administrators. Because I've got, you know, counselors and paras and non-classroom teachers that'll be doing this administration with students. You know, if we have makeup tests, is there anything else out there for that training other than that one PowerPoint that's on the DESE site?
So are you wanting technical or are you wanting more about instructional?
Yes. So the reason I ask that is because we have people that are doing some administration that aren't doing the practice tests and the performance tests, or, you know what the kids have actually done with their classroom teacher, because classroom teachers can't do all those makeup tests. It's just impossible for time.
Well, you know, I really haven't thought it from that perspective, other than, you know, we have the tutorials, we have, you know, manuals, we've got practice forms. So shoot me some ideas of what you need. You know, we can try to develop that, or in conjunction to develop that. You know, because there are quite a bit of just resources, but they're spread out all over. You know, when you're looking at student samples, they're all within the English language arts web pages. Because, you know, it really hones back in more to instructional than, you know, than the assessment. But yeah, I guess also I think you're also looking at probably some technical things that maybe will calm your administrators down too, you know, about capturing or you know, how many characters, you know, the students can have. You know, I guess that may be something else, you know, because a writing prompt, roughly you get 10,000 characters. I have maybe 4 or 5 kids who ever hit that mark. Most of them do 1,000 to 3,000, and that's about it.
Are you talking about the writing prompt?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sean, another question that came up was, we know during MAP administration that all content related posters need to come down. are procedural posters able to stay up, or do you feel like everything needs to come down?
Really not, no. I'm a little bit lost on procedural. Maybe, you know, if they're just, they're thinking or strategies.
Yeah, probably.
I
Yeah.
really don't see an issue with that because there's no content. You know, and like in most procedural, you know, if you were thinking about going back to the writing prompt, there is a whole, you know, writer's checklist. You know, so that's definitely available at all times for those kiddos. So those I don't see an issue. It's really more just anything that's content that, you know, someone can come back and say, well, the teacher cheated. They left up, you know, a skeleton chart or, you know, a word chart.
Right. Okay.
You're saying like, we have anchor charts everywhere in our classrooms, you know, creating a plot map. Like that's a procedure. You're saying that's okay to leave up?
I don't see an issue if it doesn't have content. Yeah, I don't think it's going to give students a full advantage against any others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to have their own ways they're going to attack the item itself. You know, if it's how to graph something, then that's content.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any more questions from the group? So Sean, if you don't mind, can I wrap up some of the key things that I took away from what you were saying, just being out to schools, or anything else you'd like to add before I kind of wrap it up?
Well, the other thing that I want to attack is if anyone's been paying attention or, you know, attended the NSIP 6 seminars. I know there's a lot of consternation and fear about next year in 22-23 about students in EOC courses and taking the assessment. You know, and it came out in the memo, and it's just highlighted on, I think, in the table of contents, it changes in NSIP 6, but it all occurs next year. You know, as students in EOC courses, if they're awarded the credit, they will need to take the assessment that year, you know, and not delay. You know, it's one of those is getting to the equity of the data. You know, I mean, there's questions, you know, and districts are frustrated with their neighbors, and I'm just going to put it out there. You know, waiting 2 years to test Algebra 1. While, you know, you test all your kiddos after you gave the Algebra 1 class. So it's one of those they're really trying to hone in. You know, the statement is the right test, right time, but the right time is if you're awarding credit to say the kid's moving on to the next course, they should be taking that test. So that's where a lot of that's coming out. So I know that there's a little bit of questions about your 8th graders and if they are not going to pass the course, what you do. I know a lot of that more clarification will come from NSIP as we get into next year. How are they going to deal with students this year who may not take the assessment? Again, that'll be a lot of those updates from NSIP 6, NSIP starting next year after all of the information has been put out for the 22 data. But just wanted to kind of put that out there that, you know, more information will be coming on that, but kind of giving a clarification of that rule also.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, one of the biggest takeaways.
I'll interject one more, because we know there's a lots of other little things that flow around to, like English 2 and an EL student who's less than 12 months. You know, they may pass the course but would not have to take that assessment that year. They could get a pass. The rules, they would take it by the time they graduate. So those are some of the other little nuances and rules that Jocelyn and her team's going to have to work through.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And one of the biggest takeaways was just your comments on 80% around will be the priority standard and how some of those discrete questions, you're just replacing them. Blueprints will stay the same. But this idea that I see a lot as I go into schools, that sometimes with the priority standards, teachers are thinking, oh, now I'm not responsible for all my MLS and the other don't matter. So I just want to reiterate and support that, the message of all, and just you alluded to the vertical progression. So the supporting standards don't go away. Many times those are needed so that students can master the priority standards. So I just encourage the more work that administrators and leaders can do with that to help teachers understand how all of the standards work together. You know, because just that misconception of we hear, oh, priority standards are going to be tested, so that's all I'm going to focus on. And helping them really understand. And as you talked about scaffolding for students, as you analyze those items, it's not just about the items, but what kinds of thinking skills are kids missing. And if you understand how your standards progress, it will help teachers to make better decisions about how to scaffold their kids and the learning. So I had to just add that piece and reiterate it.
It's an absolute fear, you know. You always have something good to help and assist, but then somebody wants to make it where they can do better on the test. And, you know, it's one of those things, you may see a bump, but I don't want to be the teacher next year who's trying to find the foundations with that were never laid. And it may not be important in grade 4, but it becomes huge in grade 5. And if it's missing, and we've all had to do that, we've had to stop, do 2 to 3 days of instruction and building on wet cement, you know, as we always kind of call that, building on foundations, and it struggles. You know, and we all know that those gaps occur. So it's one of those, you know, we're really trying to hone in. All of the standards are important, but where you want to get to. So, you know, I'm thinking about, as Casey was talking about the writing, or, honing in, thinking about that writing prompt. So many people spend so much time on 2 points, you know, on the conventions. So, you know, they're just drilling these poor kiddos to death over spelling and capitalization. And it's only 2 points out of the whole bucket. But the 2 other big buckets are elaboration and organization. You know, if the students can't do that, then those 2 points really doesn't tell you if they can write or not. They can do spelling. And so, you know, that's how we've been kind of really thinking about, you know, talking about that data too, and showing, look, drilling kids on worksheets and spelling words is probably not the best amount of time. You know, going back and working on the elaboration, and then you can work on the spelling and the punctuation with those kiddos as they're elaborating their thoughts and putting their thoughts into paper or into the computer. Then you're getting more bang for your buck. You're looking at that bigger end, and then being able to fill out the supporting standards, or those discrete standards as we call them.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We hope you get to feeling better. And when I post this video, I'll also put your email, if that's okay. So if there's any follow-up questions, I know you're always so great. You're phenomenal about answering and helping everybody know what they need to know. So thank you so much.
Sure. And I'll probably see you next Thursday. And again, just a shout out, Assessment this year has been doing trying to do an assessment hour about every Thursday. Some Thursdays we get double booked, but, we try to do a lot of that, just kind of highlighting and really bringing back questions we get throughout the week. We do some topics. We did some item writing training one time. So, it's one of those that, we're trying to provide opportunity. Again, it's not just for DTC. I've got a few administrators and a couple of teachers who have breaks that hour of jumping on and just, ask questions.
Sean, do you record those?
I don't have a hub, so I haven't been recording this year.
Okay. Well, so one of the things I could do, if you don't mind, on my network, somebody was saying, what's assessment hour? Of course, I know because I try to attend. So Sean hosts a weekly on Thursdays, just an hour where anybody who has a question can jump on a live meeting with him. But if it's okay with you, Sean, I'll also put that information and might even remind people and put the link on my network when that's happening. Because again, administrators are all crazy busy and forget or don't know where to sign up with the calendar. So if it's okay with you, I'll help communicate that. So that's just another avenue I can kind of help communicate for people to join that.
Yeah, and I think the third week of April, we'll do like 30 minutes a day, just because
You're
you'll
gonna get
have
serious.
well, it's always going to be one of those, something is going to happen, or they're going to, panic, and they haven't had an opportunity all day to go get this question asked. So, we'll have that Thursday afternoon, just 30 minutes, jump in, ask questions, I just got a kid moved in, what do I do? We're happy to walk them through, or, show them other things that are on the, within eDirect. Usually that's the one they need to find something and they just can't, where's my scripts? For their human reader, so we can definitely show them where those are at. So I'm looking probably that 30 week of April. That's when the biggest volume of the tests will be.
Awesome. Well, I'm pulling up the screen because somebody asked where you could find it. So I think I know. Can you correct me if I'm wrong? If you go to the DESE website, here's how I get there. If you go to educators and under curriculum and then scroll
No, it's
down.
under,
Oh,
I
well,
will go to assessment.
you would. Okay. So it's like, you can find it there. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me have you do that. So educators assessment.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then it should be office assessment virtual office hours.
Right here.
Yep.
Okay. And so what I'll do though, if you're okay with it, Sean, I'll go ahead and just post that. And as you start doing even the more frequent ones, I'll follow that and just try to update the 300 people on my network too. So the more people who know about it, the better.
I got about 300 signed up. Only about 40 can show up per day or
That's
per
the
time.
life of
but
an admin though.
It is.
We have
It
the
is,
best
and they're
well
quite busy.
intentions. So.
But
Okay.
I always start off that you guys are absolutely extremely overwhelmed. So
Oh,
storing it on the DESE website is not appropriate at this time. They didn't want us putting that much data on the system. So hopefully we can get a Google Hub.
yep. Well, we're cutting in and out, but thank you so much. I will put this information on the network with the recorded call. And I thank everyone for your time today. Take care.